All right, let's get started. So, what do we see on the paper today? I always like to take printouts because I find it easy as a reference image next to me. I can go back and forth to refer. Well, the colors here, as you know, is just perfect. You know how the sunset is. There is this colors going on almost like a rainbow. Lot of colors here, the yellows and pinks and blues. But before that, what we really need to decide is how light or how dark are we going to make this painting. If you see the black and white picture, I always keep the reference black and white picture because it gives me an understanding that how dark or light I should go. And you can see, although the sky is so colorful, it's actually quite light. And the darkest elements here is the land actually. Now, do you know why this is so dark? The reason being the light, there's not much light here now. It's sunset. And that's why the shadows are very dark. And obviously, you can just go ahead and paint black, but we're not going to do black. We're going to make it colorful, just like how the sky is. And that way, the whole painting would look very unified. Also, you can see a lot of reflections here, reflection of the lighthouse, reflection of the sky. You can see the water is very clear here, and it's almost glistening because of how the light is hitting here. It's very important that you notice these things when you're painting a sunset because the color temperature is very different here. You cannot put the same colors that you would put in a very hot, bright day at 2 p.m. or so. So we're going to make sure that the colors here resemble a sunset here. Okay. So that's how we're going to approach this painting. Another thing, what we're going to make sure here is the techniques that we're going to use. The sky is really, really soft here. You can see that. And we want to make sure that it looks very soft and almost the merging of colors on the sky. And in the water here, you can see there are some really hard edges, and we're going to make sure that they look hard. Same on the land, you can see a lot of rocks. Same with the lighthouse. They all need to look little stiff and more structure, right? So we're going to use different techniques of how we're going to approach this painting. But first, we'll just see what are the colors we're going to use. I have my two palettes here because I think I had too many colors here, but it's mostly the same colors that we see in the picture reference image, and they may be a little different on your laptop or on your phone especially, so don't really follow it very hardly. Whatever you see, maybe you're seeing a purple sky and I see more on the blue side, so feel free to go ahead and make it purple because sunset has those colors, not like a very turquoise blue that we see in the daytime. So it's okay if you want to change some of the colors, but make sure that you just have the values the way it's defined. So we have different blues here. We have the brown. I have the red that I'm going to use for the lighthouse, and some more pink you see in the sky. I have the yellow that's going to go in the sky. Whatever you use in the sky has to go on the ground and in the water. That's what makes this painting unique, unified. It has all come together. Otherwise, they'll just look like two broken parts. You know, the land is different than the sky. But that's not how nature is. They're all connected. Everything is connected. So we're going to make sure that we are connected in every form. So that's very important. And this is going to give us that reminder that, hey, we need to connect it. So, all right, get your colors on the palette, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. But before we start, I'm going to show you some certain techniques of what we're going to do to make those skies look beautiful. First, I want to explain what is a wet on dry technique. This paper is dry, so I'm going to put some wet paint on this. This is called wet on dry technique. And when we start the painting, I'm going to tell you which technique we're going to use. Next is the wet on wet. I'm going to use just plain water. And then use some wet paint. This is wet on wet. You can also go ahead and use some pink here or red. You can see they're all mixing on the paper. Okay. Then this is called the wet on wet. Last is the dry technique. I'm going to completely dry my brush, pick some paint, and just rub it on the paper. So this is called the dry brush technique. And I'll explain where we're going to use this. Okay. So these are the three techniques that we're going to use. Now, there's another important thing I'm going to show, like we can practice before we get into this big space, because it can be very overwhelming for beginners, especially how to tackle this whole space, right? The first thing I'm going to suggest is use a big brush, a thick brush, at least bigger than this, or at least something this size. You cannot use a small, tiny brush because you won't be able to cover this area quickly. And what's going to happen is the paint is going to start dry, and then you will not get very even finish on this. So definitely have a bigger brush. You can also go something like this, whatever you have, but something bigger, something, even a flat brush will do very well. So we're going to start here. I'm going to show you how we're going to try the small demo here. Now I have my colors already here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just wet this area with plain water. This is just a demo, okay, of how you're going to handle this painting. It's always nice to practice a little bit before you jump in. And you can see I'm going to get into yellow. You have to keep the paints ready to move, okay? Because that's not the time you're going to take it out of the tube. I'm going to go down a little bit. Then I'm going to pick some maybe orange or red. Remember, I'm going very light. Why? Because, like I said, this is very, very light. I may go a little darker pink. Again, I can go down, go with some blues. Can take a little thicker paint here and get in here. You see how the paint is just mixing by itself on this wet sheet of paper. What's important here is to paint something like this soft is one, your paper should be wet uniformly. Second, your paints have to be ready on your palette. And third, you have to work a little quickly. So that's why, like I said, you have to plan this painting a little bit in your mind. Even if the results are not perfect, at least with practice, that vision starts to get clear. But remember, the magic of watercolors is that there is still some uncertainty, which is okay. That's the fun part of it, right? So make sure that these things are ready so that when the paper is wet, you can go directly quickly in. Because as soon as you put the water on paper, it'll start to dry. And if you're really sitting in a very humid room, it will dry quickly. These are the certain important things you need to do to make such successful sunset paintings. Okay, so let's get started with our painting, your actual painting. We'll start gathering our colors. But now you understand the techniques and just a small demo of how we're going to approach this painting. Okay, so let's get in. I'm going to just wet my paint slightly so that I have some fluidity with this. I can use different blues because they're going to give me a little different look. Okay. I also need a little bit of turquoise blue. I don't have that much of this paint left. It's quite dry, so I'm just going to use the tube here. It's just better that way. But I like to use different blues in the painting because, you should just go out and take a look at the sky. The variety of blue that you see, it's just phenomenal. So definitely go out and try. Not today, it's quite a gloomy day. But yeah, let's get started. So we're going to handle this from top to down so that when this dries, we can actually approach the bottom here. Okay, let's get started with this. I'm going to take a big brush. Okay, a nice thick brush. And I'm going to start from top. I hope when you're drawing this whole image, make sure how the horizon is, where the horizon line is. It's very important how you divide the painting, where your focal point is. But remember, these topics are very, very large and advanced, and you cannot cover this in a 1 hour class because I know in this workshop, our whole purpose is to get into the painting and finish a nice piece because that's what is going to give you confidence. And as you want to improve your painting, you can get into the depth of where should I put my focal point? Where should I put the lighthouse? And if I want to change anything, if I want to add people or a boat, all those things are um, advanced topics. So we don't want to get into that. Remember, look, I have read this at least once or twice so that I've covered this uniformly because remember, the minute you come down, the upper layer starts to dry. Okay. Immediately, we're going to get into our yellow. Let me just turn this around. Okay. And I'm going to just get into some of the colors here. You can actually come down slightly. Remember, because it's sunset, the yellows won't be at the bottom. Okay. Same. We're going to go into these pinks. Nice, beautiful skies. Don't be afraid to put color. It's okay if you mess up. It's just a sky. It's just a sky. Remember, sky can be any way. Okay. So don't be afraid of the sky. I'm going to take some blue. I'm going to come down. And see, as you come down, it not only gets darker, okay, in color, but also in value. What is value? Value is basically something, lightness or darkness of any color. Okay. So if it's light blue or dark blue, that's what we were talking to. I think I messed up here with the colors here. It's okay. And some blue here. I know you may find this is like very overwhelming that I'm working so quickly. It's okay if you cannot catch up with the speed. You get the point that we have to go wet on wet, and your results are going to be slightly different than mine because of not just the paint and paper and the quality and the speed, but also because how you see your painting. Okay, remember, you're the artist, not me. You are the creator of this, your own painting. Okay, so the results are going to be definitely different, and that's what we are hoping for. We don't want everything to look the same. We are different people, we see things differently, and it's very important that we make this painting ours, okay? Completely ours. I'm going to make it a little more darker. And you can see this is turned into a nice bluish purple, which is fine. I can also pick some more blue and move in here. While this is wet, I can move things around a little bit, okay? You have to make sure that you're not putting too much water on this area now because the paint is just start going to spread out like a bloom, like a cauliflower bloom, which is not what we are desiring here. So make sure that it's not too wet, it's not too watery. Okay. Okay. I think we can stop here. I don't want to disturb it too much because, like I said, it's a very, very fragile face. If you disturb it too much, you may just run into big blooms, which is not what you want in your sky. So we can leave this here. Okay. Let this dry. And then we can move on to the next part. Okay. So I'll give you guys a minute to catch up and then we can move on to the next one. Now, I cannot touch this area right now. The reason being, these edges are quite wet. And as soon as I put any wet paint here, they're going to start entering the other area here. So we're going to give it a minute. But before that, we can work on this area. We'll leave the middle area as it is. Okay, we have to separate it. So I'll give you guys a minute to catch up and then we move on to the next one. Okay, we can continue. Now, as you see in this picture, how does the water look like here? You can see they're the same colors. There's yellow, there's some oranges, excuse me. There's some turquoise blues and some purples. Okay. So we're going to at least do the base here and then let it dry because we're not yet done the lighthouse and everything. And because after we do the lighthouse, we'll do the reflection so that you understand it better. Okay. So we're just going to use the base and then later come to the middle part. The same colors again and same concept. We're going to work wet on wet. I'm going to wet this area. Okay. And be very careful that I don't touch the horizon line here that's dividing the land and water, because I don't want to get into any watercolor blooms that are not very desirable unless you have an intention that you want that effect. Okay. I'm going to use the same yellow, very tiny bit, maybe add a little bit of that orange here. I'm going to keeping it very, very light. Remember, as we mentioned, that this is the reflection of the water. Okay. And you want to keep it light. I'm sorry, reflection of the sky. The water that we're trying to paint is a reflection of the sky. This is coming to the water, right? And then a little bit of blue here. Okay. Because we're going to actually add more blue here. Once it's little dry, I'm going to make some dry brush technique. But for now, we're going to leave it as it is. Okay. And I'm going to try this and check this. Okay, looks okay. I think this is still quite wet. So what we can do it is we can go ahead and do our lighthouse. Okay. And I'm already seeing in my black and white image that this sky, this side needs another layer, because how we see the thickness here, okay, of the sky. But because this is wet, we're not going to touch it. And we'll come back and add another layer, let it dry. For now, I'm just going to use some red and some blue to make this lighthouse. Okay. So nothing fancy here, just a red or orange that you can find. Okay. You can keep it a little different from the red that you have. And we can go ahead. And if you can use a tiny brush, that will be a better choice so that you have more control over the small shapes. Okay. Remember, small shapes, small brushes, big shapes, big brushes. Okay. And can even mix a bit of pink too. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. Red doesn't mean that you have to just use one color. Okay. The light is hitting in the way that all the colors are just blending in each other. Okay. Once this dries, there's another step we're going to do on this. If you see on the right hand side of this lighthouse, it is a bit darker. It's because of the shadows. Okay. So we want to make sure that we also put the shadows, otherwise look flat. So first we're going to do our blue here. Okay. And on the right hand side, little more. And on this side, lighter, really light. This is like a platform, I think, but it is light. That's what is more important. Sometimes we don't know what that shape is, right? We don't know if it's the land or is it some part or something. The best thing to do is imagine everything in the form of a shape, and it just takes off any guesswork. That's very important that you imagine everything in the form of shape. And this side, look, I'm going to do it dark because all I see is as a shape. I don't want to really label anything. Okay. It just makes your painting easy. Okay. All right. Next, what are we going to do next? Yeah, we can go in. Okay. I think the lighthouse also has, okay, the lighthouse on the top has again some blending of colors of reds, some dark, some light, and that's going to be hard to see. But if you take a closer look, you can see that there are some lights and darks. I'm going to take the darker red here and go paint on this on the right hand side because of the shadow areas. Okay. Okay. This part is quite dry, so we can go ahead and do the land. Now, what are we going to paint on the land? What colors? Okay. It's the same colors that we can repeat. We can do like a base of blue. And where you see almost like black, we can actually use the same pinks and dark blues and make it like a really thick black. Okay. You can also make it purple. The most important thing is to keep the values like the light and dark, the contrast here. Okay. So I'm going to take the blue again, take a tiny bit of the pink here, mix it because it's not a very bright blue. It's not uh, like the daytime. It's sunset, so it's a bit dull here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get in those areas. I'm just going to take a little bit of brush here to clean it. It just went a little beyond the line. Okay, so this is the first layer. We let this dry because obviously we don't want to touch it. Next, what we can do is we can move on to these reflections. Okay, look how the reflections are behaving here. There is this first layer of red, and then there's almost like a very blurry form of red here, reddish orange. So this is what is very important as you move away, how the reflections are changing. So at the surface is going to be different, and at here it's going to be different. Okay. Always look at a black and white image to see how dark it is. Okay. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use some of the red here, nice glowy red. And paint it here, keeping it light. You can always paint, make it dark. Then I'm going to use this darker red or kind of pinkish red. Go here. Use some of the orangish color here. Okay. It is sharp and dark here. So we can mix a bit of purple here with the red, with the pink, sorry. And add some of the layer here. You can add a tiny bit of blue. Okay. Next, we need some, on the reflections, we need some purple or orangish lines here to finish this bottom part. Okay. And I'm going to take like this kind of brush here. It just gives it an easy effect here. Very lightly. Use this orange. Orange is reddish. And just put some tiny, you can say dash, you can call whatever you like, but it's just tiny strokes. Okay. Keep it light, keep it little varied, some dark, some light. It's important to keep them varied. They shouldn't look all the same. Next, I can make this a purple one. Make sure you make some small, some big, some light, some dark. Give some space in between. They shouldn't all look like very perfectly spaced. It has to look a little natural. Okay. Lastly, now we're going to use the same brush and I'm going to wipe out most of the excess moisture. I'm going to use this blue, turquoise blue. Okay, I'm going to use some paper to first see how it's behaving. Drag it on the scrap paper. And then maybe it needs a bit more. Go on in the bottom. Then same blue added with a little darker blue. And again, go. Okay, let's check this. It's quite wet. You cannot disturb it. Let's wait it out. Because in the meanwhile, we do have this land to work on. Now, if you see, there are some shapes here which look like rocks. And our only intention is to just look like rocks. We are not going to perfect those shapes. I'm going to take a smaller, thinner brush and take some blue. I'm going to mix some of these reds here. Actually make it almost purplish, bluish. Some variations. Okay, some thicker paint, okay? It shouldn't be very thin. Nice, thick consistency. And then we can go in and add some shapes here. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can keep varying it a little bit, even add some browns here and blues here. Make it look almost like black. The point is to keep in mind of the lightness and the darkness of this area. That's all. You can mix your blues and purples, but that's the most important point, that they should have this contrast. I'm going to mix some brown and some blue here. This almost looks like black. So maybe on this edge, on the side, you can go a little darker. Okay. It is really dark. So yes, you can actually pick some nice thick paint here. If I would do this by myself at home, of course, I'll take some more time and do some more layers. But because we don't have whole day to paint here, I'm going to take some thicker paint and make the contrast look the way it is. I'm going to keep continuing to paint this area. You can pick some blues as well. Make sure there's some variation. Some look black, some look purple, some look just really dark enough. Okay, so this looks dark. And then if you see near the lighthouse, there are these steps. And I'm going to take this nice dark thick paint, almost like black. draw those steps, those railings that go. Okay. Same on the top. Okay. And you can take a bit of this darker red here, put some shadows here on this lighthouse. You see, okay? Some more of that reddish oranges pigments here. I can see some here. Okay. You can also do a small wash of yellow on the side. Some red as well. Some thicker areas of water here. Okay. Now this is still a bit wet, but we still have some work to do. If you see in the painting, there is also some people. So let's do some people here. And to paint people, I know it's so tiny here that you can barely see, but the best way to do is with a tiny brush. I don't have that long brush today, but I can show you when you do people, you just holding it and going across in a shape. You're just looking at a shape here, okay? Something like that. And I know it's hard to really see here, but they're very, very tiny. So I'm just going to keep that in mind and just take some black paint. How would I make black? You mix 50% of ultramarine blue and 50% of brown, like burnt sienna, and that makes black. It could be a little different for everyone because of the quality and the brands of paint. So that's different. So I'm going to paint people here. Honestly, they're just shapes. If you say people, they're just shapes. And it looks like they're fishing. Okay. I don't see much. Okay, we can actually do another layer. So I'm going to take some more blue. Okay. It's quite wet. If I disturb it, it's going to let's give us a minute so that people can catch up. Okay. In the meanwhile, we can check the reflections. We do have some place here. So again, I'm going to take this dry brush technique. Same slide blue here. Okay. Move across this area. You can even do a bit of reddish dry brush technique here. It'll just brighten up this area. Okay. Now you can see that we got all the colors everywhere. Okay. You can do some purple here, tiny bit of purple here. So now what happened is the yellows, the reds, the blues, everything is falling in layers throughout the painting. Okay, and this is very important. Otherwise, the painting will look really flat. Okay, so once this dries, I think we can add more black, darker colors here. But for now, this is good. Okay, and we can try to add a bit of to take a wet brush and just blend it all together so that they all mix well. It's very important how you take care of this step because you don't want to ruin the rest of the painting, right? Be very, very careful. I'm going to dab my brush. Okay. So this looks better now because now we can see the clear difference between how the values are emerging. You see how light it goes, darker, darker, darker. And then there is the land that is really the darkest part, and the reflection, which is light again. So you see how we see the contrast here. And this is why this whole focal point is popping up because of the contrast here. Okay. And of course, don't forget to sign your painting. Uh, you can sign anywhere, but honestly, never in the middle. It's always nice to sign a little on the edges here so that you don't ruin the painting. And that way it's also seen, but you have your signature. So definitely sign your painting, your artwork, and do send me your paintings. I'll be happy to give you a written feedback. I'll explain what you could do better. And if you have anything interesting to paint, we'll do that for the next workshop. We'll try to do it. Please definitely share what's going on in your mind. It's always nice to hear what you want to paint. Um, and yes, like Jeremy said, the next one is going to be an in-person workshop. It's going to be at the Gum Spring Library. And I'm really excited to meet you all, paint together, and have a good time. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining in today.